It's hard to believe that 10 years have passed since the establishment of the Fund for Global Human Rights. I had the honour to serve as board chair from 2003 to 2009, and I'm very glad to continue a link as honorary chair since then. I well remember being approached by one of the founders, Ann Stein, who asked me if I would serve as chair, even though she would do a lot of the work, very typical of her. I would like to salute Ann Stein and the other two founders, Josh Mailman and Mona Younis, for their huge vision and commitment at the beginning, which guided us. And also Regan Ralph, who has been executive director, and the wonderful staff of the Global Fund. They have charted a course which is very special, and I think we can all be very proud on this 10th anniversary of what the Fund for Global Human Rights has achieved. The Fund's work in funding global human rights is quite unique because of the way it has been done and the knowledge brought to bear. A knowledgeable board on issues of human rights and a very dedicated and committed staff who worked out how really to identify those organizations which should be supported and could give leadership locally on human rights. I think it was very important that a regional and sub-regional approach geographically in different regions of the world was adopted. That work was done to identify the human rights trends in those regions and sub-regions. And then connections were made between groups to create synergies, and even between funders, in order to maximize the funding that could be available for organizations. A very skillful, analytical, and informed approach. I learned a great deal as I read those briefs about the regions and sub-regions that we were funding human rights in. And again, you can't do that without an in-depth knowledge and the ability of board members to influence and indeed encourage this approach, which was what happened over the years. From the beginning, I was impressed by the way the Fund for Global Human Rights sought out those working in the two areas of human rights, both on civil and political issues, but also on economic, social and cultural rights, rights to food and safe water, health, education. In other words, a comprehensive approach. Now I want to encourage the fund to maybe do another little stretch and to bear in mind the impact that climate change is having, a negative impact on enjoyment of human rights. I'm very aware of that because of the work of my foundation, the Mayor Robinson Foundation, Climate Justice. It's really significant, the injustice of climate change, which affects the most vulnerable people and the most vulnerable and poorest communities, very often because they live in vulnerable areas. And it is seriously undermining their rights to food and safe water, health and education. And they need support for what they're trying to do, to build resilience, to cope better. This may be a little different from traditional human rights, but I believe that climate change poses one of the greatest threats to human rights. And I believe a fund like the Fund for Global Human Rights should recognize that nexus between climate change, development, and human rights, and support communities which are confronted with climate shocks, which don't have insurance, and which find their food security, their water, their health undermined. So I want you to continue to do what you have done so well in the regions where you're funding, but also to take into account climate justice. And I hope that the celebration of the 10th anniversary will really be a wonderful one, because we should all be very proud of the 10 years of the work and leadership by board members, by Regan Ralph and her colleagues in the staff. I will salute you on the day, and I'm sorry I can't be with you.